Greetings, welcome back to the Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel, where we're taking advantage of a cold, late winter, rainy day for some inside projects. We're going to continue working on our non-returning boomerangs. Great little winter project to tinker with some wood carving, right? So in this video, this is the second of the series that will be at least 3 or 4. The first one we talked about the cultural context, all of the details of the science behind them, how they worked, why they work, where they work, all of that info. In this video, I'm going to be heavily depending on those topics that we've already covered. So if you're just popping in now, pause this video, go watch that, and then come back. Or if at any point in this video you're confused or not sure what I'm talking about, it's because the answers are there. Link at the top of the screen if you want to go pop over. In this one, I want to discuss wood choice in terms of species and characteristics of wood that is good for making an NRB. I'm going to talk about design, stock selection within the wood species that you have chosen. So without further ado, wood choice. As we discussed in that first video, a very important aspect to material selection for a boomerang is density, because it directly relates to ballistic coefficient. The higher your ballistic coefficient, the better your boomerang will carry through the air, the farther it will go for a given, energy of throw, right? So we want denser wood. Denser is better within reason. Remember again, there are multiple ivory boomerangs. We talked about the one from Poland. There's also ivory boomerangs from Egypt. Right, and that has a density of close to 2. Okay, specific gravity close to 2, twice as dense as water. So that's kind of about where it's going to top out. You don't want to make a boomerang out of brass, right, or lead or steel. Although hungamungas are kind of boomerang-like throwing knives, but that's a totally different topic. Because you have to throw it with the human hand. Okay, so more weight will carry farther for a given starting velocity, but your hand has to be able to give it that starting velocity with control and with good aim. Okay, so there's a point of diminishing returns. Denser is better up until the point that your throwing implement is overpowering your arm's ability to throw it accurately and well. Okay, once you reach that point, you're going the other direction. You're going to get worse and worse and worse performance because you, as a human, are no longer able to control the action of your boomerang, your Carly. Okay, and I'm going to be talking about Carly style boomerangs here, Carly or rabbit stick. So we want to pick the densest wood that we have, and I've messed with a few here. Context is very important with this as well. I am talking to you from northeastern North America. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about personal experience using the woods that we have here. Okay, I would love to have some audience participation. So if you're watching this from another area of the world, chime in the message box. Tell us what your favorite woods are, or what woods, as we go through this discussion and we talk about the characteristics that make one wood better than another wood within this context. If you have woods that you're thinking, oh, I bet this would be great, like pop that in. And then other people from your area can benefit from this whole conversation. So I'm counting on some audience participation with this one. So to start with, this one that I have here, this is ash. Okay, this is ash. This is ash that I painted red. Why paint it red? The answer is because it shows up well in the grass, for me, okay? And if you're going to be throwing it a lot, and this is the first one that I made to really practice with and play with that really tuned up well. So I've thrown this one quite a bit, and if you're throwing it in like a stubbly field, it is much easier to find something red that stands out against the grass than something plain wood which looks like every other stick. Turns out a stick looks a lot like a stick, right?
Crazy.
Imagine that. So, if you're actually going to go out and throw these in somewhat realistic conditions, or actually use them to hunt with if that's legal in your area, paint it red or orange or something that is going to help you get it back. Okay, leaving it stick color is a good way to lose your stick, because there's a lot of sticks out there in the world. So both of these are ash. Now, ash is on the lightweight and weak side for boomerang making. Now, if you're an average woodworker, that just made the bristles stand up on the back of your neck. It's like, what do you mean, Adam? Ash is good, hard, heavy, durable wood. We make baseball bats out of it. Yes, I know. But this is a different context. An ash cabinet is never going to break in the context of the normal use of a cabinet, right? And an ash baseball bat is a big, heavy club. So if you're going to make a ball head club or a gun stock shaped club, right? Sure, use ash. It's going to be a great wood for you and will work very well. But this is a boomerang, not a club. Okay? And ash is it's just not dense enough to be easy to tune. It can be tuned, but it's not easy to tune, because in these less dense hardwoods, okay, when you're starting to build your airfoil in the profile of your boomerang blade, right, because they don't have a lot of weight, a lot of density, they want to soar up. So you end up with a condition where, if you start, let's say you start out with a neutral airfoil, just a teardrop shape, okay? And then you add more airfoil to get it to go a little farther, and add more airfoil to get it to go a little farther. Just about the point where you're getting close to your optimum airfoil for the distance that you want to reach, it starts to soar. It doesn't have enough weight to hold it down level. Okay? So there is a limit beyond the ballistic coefficient thing. There is a limit to the maximum range that you're going to be able to get with the lighter hardwoods. You're never going to get past 60 to 80 yards. Okay? Just because once you put enough airfoil, enough lift to get out to 100 yards, it's not dense enough to hold it to the ground, and it soars. Okay? So the less dense woods are much more prone to soaring. Now, it absolutely will work. Both of these throw pretty nicely. But you have to be careful. You have to actually throw them a little bit down, so there's a bit more skill in throwing. If you throw them dead flat, they will want to soar. If you throw them a little bit down, you can compensate for that. Okay? So in the first video I made, I threw both of these, and I threw this one and threw it right into the ground. I left it in the blooper reel so you can see what I was doing. It's like, oh no, I'm on camera screwing up with my boomerang. So I tried to sort it a little bit flatter, and I overcompensated a little bit, and it soared up. Right? So you can see that behavior. But this is a human thing that humans do, right? And it shows you the real behavior and real challenge of using these implements, right? So I left it in there. It's good. Yeah, it turns out I'm not perfect, but you knew that already. So anyhow, I would consider these the bottom tier of good useful woods, right? Notice how I said that. Yes, I'm putting them in the bottom tier because they don't have the density, but they're good and useful. You can make a boomerang out of them. If you find an ash crook that's the perfect shape for the tool you want to make, absolutely use that thing. Okay, absolutely use that thing. Know you're going to have tuning challenges, but we'll talk about tuning challenges in the third video. Now, how do we define this? Well, specific gravity is the term. Got to uncover my cheat sheet here a little bit. Specific gravity is the term that we use to describe the density of these woods. And specific gravity is a unitless term, and it's, if you measure density, which is always going to be a mass measurement divided by a volume measurement, and you measure the density of your object, and then you measure the density of water in the same units, and then you divide them so the units cancel, that's your specific gravity. Okay? So in metric, your density of woods is going to be kilograms per cubic meter. And water has a density of 1,000 kilograms per cubic meter, so you just divide by, so say you measure it, you have 650 kilograms per cubic meter for wood. Well, that's a specific gravity of 0.65. Okay, which also turns out to be fairly similar to the density of ash and the bottom tier of really good woods. Okay, so about 0.65 for your specific gravity. If you're doing the same thing in imperial units, it's going to be pounds per cubic foot, and water has a density of 63 pounds per cubic foot. So you take whatever pound per cubic foot measure divided by 63, and that gives you your specific gravity. And those are annoying numbers, which is why the metric system is the only system. Sorry, just is. Move on. Use metric and move on. So, I'm going to be giving you everything here in the unit list specific gravity measurements. So this lower tier of good, useful, readily tunable, even if there is a little bit more difficulty, is going to be a specific gravity between about 0.65 and 0.75 at an equilibrium moisture content. So often you'll see oven dry weight and weight at 12% moisture. 12% moisture is that's kind of your average equilibrium moisture for a real piece of wood in real air volume. Okay? So that's very much true where I live. Like the humid temperate region, 10 to 12% moisture is going to be your equilibrium. Harsh, dry desert regions, you might have an equilibrium moisture more like 6 or 8%. Okay? But the 12% is sort of the assumed average equilibrium in a humid region. Okay? Little higher if you're in the true wet tropics, you'll have be a little higher than that, maybe 12-15%. Okay? But this is why if you've ever bought furniture and moved furniture across country or something where say you are moving back and forth between like Arizona and New York, right? Everything's going to shrink or everything's going to expand when you do that, right? It's going to expand if you're moving toward the wet. It's going to shrink if you're moving toward the dry. So that's a more realistic evaluation of your actual density of your actual object than the oven dry density. Okay, so that's what I'm giving you. And 12% moisture content between 0.65 and 0.75 for the specific gravities for the bottom tier good workable woods. And this is where the vast majority of your classic cabinet making woods live. Because when you're making a dresser, right, you want it to be relatively easy to move if you need to rearrange your bedroom. Okay, but you still want it to be very durable. And this is that sweet spot. So pretty much all of your cabinet making woods, your ash, cherry, maple, oak, all of those woods are going to be in this range because that is the sweet spot for cabinet woods, right? And here where I live, we are very, very rich in these. So almost everything which grows in my forest can make a boomerang. But if we want to make a better boomerang that can get a little bit more range and is a little bit easier to tune, we want to go to a more dense hardwood. So the middle range of hardwoods is I'm going to call between 0.75 and 0.85. Okay? Equilibrium moisture content specific gravities. So that 0.75 range, this is right where we find the really hard cabinet making woods in this 0.75 range that woodworkers still like to use but like to complain about a little bit more. Okay, so like rock maple, white oak, some of your red oaks, those sorts of critters are kind of right in this range. So you can think about your sugar maple and your white oak as the transition to the mid-range. Better than ash, but still not your top tier woods. Your top tier woods are going to be over 0.85. So again, I'll kind of keep to my Eastern North America examples. The transition from the middle tier to the top tier is going to be these really hard woods that are almost never used by cabinet makers. Osage orange, serviceberry, I think pear, some species of pear are right around the 0.85. Persimmon wood, right around the 0.85. Okay? So that's your transition to the top tier woods. Now, you go to Australia, and you look at the boomerangs. They're made out of really dense acacias, several species of really dense acacia, and she oak, another one. These are close to the density of water, close to 0.1. Northeastern North America, we don't have anything in that range. We just don't. If you go to the southeast of North America, you have live oak, which has a density of just about, live oak's 12% moisture content density is almost exactly water, specific gravity of 1. Okay? So that is Eastern North America's only real, true top tier wood for boomerang making. And it makes squirrely branches, right? So you could find a branch that was ripped off in a storm and have a very nice boomerang there. If we go to the west coast, we have manzanita at 0.92 and desert ironwood at 1.2. So desert ironwood would be the species that would come closest to truly replicating the performance of the best Australian acacia boomerangs. Okay, that would be the one. Again, this is where I was saying, other areas of the world, I don't know your wood list. I'm going to type out sort of down in the comment section here, not the comment section, but the description section of this video. I'm going to type out a little list of the common woods and some of their densities. I'm also going to give you a link to Wood Database where you can look up other woods that aren't on this list. Okay? But pop in what you've had success with if you've tinkered with this, or what woods are on your hard and heavy list in the area where you live, and hopefully in the comments section we'll get a worldwide list of awesome boomerang woods. That would be a really great resource for folks out there who want to tinker with this technology. Okay? And then before going on, what's underneath that bottom tier? What's lighter than ash? Well, your softwoods and your really soft hardwoods. Okay? And some people say, like, a lot of people will say, just don't use them, right? Well, sure, they're not the best, but if they're what you have and you want to start learning, use them anyway. Okay? Don't use balsa wood. It's never going to hold up. But you know, if you live in an area like the high plains of North America where really your options, maybe you're lucky and somebody planted some osage out of its native range where you live, and then you could get that. But you know, if you're in the Great Plains, your options are pretty much willow and aspen. Okay, but a lot of field rows have been planted with fruit woods, and fruits have escaped from orchards, so maybe you can find a fruit wood, and you probably can find some elm. Well, elm is a bottom tier wood, but it might be your top tier wood. Go find it. Because the Chinese elm has been planted in a lot of field rows in that area. Go find it and use it. It will do. It will boomerang. And if you can't find it, and all you can find is willow and aspen, get a crook, make your boomerang shape. You know, make a good piece that can balance right. Okay. Smooth it out, but don't put an airfoil on it. Don't try to tune it. You won't be able to tune it and get a flat flying boomerang for a long distance. But you can make a true oval profile where you oval out the edges to cut down on air resistance, and you can learn to throw. Okay? Also, if you get a crook, before I made this one and tuned up this one, I thought that is a really neat shape. I want to make sure that this works. I want to see how tuning might go on it. So I took it and I traced it on a piece of plywood. Well, that's pine. That's below your bottom tier wood. And then I tinkered with it and I played with it and I saw how it performed with some different profiles and I got a little confidence. And then I made and tuned my real piece. Having that confidence of having had that practice with the plywood going into this, and I got a good result. So if you're new to this and you get, oh man, that's the most awesome, hardest wood, best natural crook boomerang blank that I've ever set my eyes on, don't try to tune it right away. Make a plywood replica, tinker with the plywood replica, then with that confidence go and do your real thing. And lastly, while we're on plywood, if you're completely new to this, at the end of this video, you can't go into tuning a boomerang if you don't know how to throw it. Okay? There is skill just to the throwing. When you bring it down, right at the last minute, you have to wrist flick to get the rotation. Okay? But you have to wrist flick in a way that the overall motion is still forward, and it's very easy to wrist flick and send it off to the side. That takes practice. Do that practice with a piece of plywood. Okay? 2 reasons. 1, you're going to screw stuff up while you're practicing, right? So, again, let's say this is your first crook. Make your plywood blank. Go make 3 or 4 plywood blanks. I don't even care if you round off the edges. You're just practicing learning how to throw to get that good rotation, to get a consistent forward throw. Do that practice with those plywood blanks. You're probably going to destroy them in the process, but man, who cares? It's just some plywood. It's probably scraps or something, right? Also, if you actually have a fully tuned far-flying boomerang and you have a straight shot this way to throw it, maybe there's a building over there and you throw off and it goes into the building, well, now you're breaking windows. No, bad news bears.
And
right?
potentially your thing.
And potentially your thing. So if you do plywood that hasn't been rounded off, sanded, or tuned in any way, it's not going to go very far. So now instead of needing a clear open wind fetch that's 200 meters long just in case you get that really long throw, now 20, 30 meters and you're fine, you're safe. You're not going to hit anything. It's not going to go farther than that, right? So you can do the practice with a short range stick. Okay? So that's wood selection in terms of species. I'm going to get a couple different things out here. I'll talk about wood selection in terms of shape. The next thing I want to talk about here is size. So if I compare these two, this small wooden one, this one is made of serviceberry, which has cheat sheet, a density of about 0.83. That's a specific gravity, 0.83. Okay. And the large red one is ash, which is 0.67. Okay. So just based on those two things, this should be the better one, but this is the better stick. Okay, because it's longer, it's bigger. Because it's bigger, it just simply has more mass. That smaller density difference isn't enough to compensate for the fact that this is just narrow and short. Okay, and it just doesn't. It works well for what it is, and I can get 50, 60 meters on a good throw with it, right? But it is a short range stick, and something this small will always be a short range stick. In the archaeological record, we do see sticks this short, but either they're popping up as like knob end clubs in wooded areas where nobody expects to get a long range, or it's a kid's toy. Okay. Again, if you are part of a culture where this is what puts food on the table, you need to start learning how to use this from a young age. Because even as a young teenager, you're going to need to be taking this and slinging at little critters to try and help feed the family, right? So you're going to be giving these to even younger children. But at the same time, younger children, you don't want to give them something that can come whack somebody who's not looking upside the head 100 meters away. So you have the practice stick. Also reference what I was saying about your own boomerang journey and learning how to throw them in the first place with shorter range sticks. It's just wise to have a practice stick. So these little guys are in the practice stick category, not the actual hunting category. Your actual hunting sticks are going to be about 2 foot long, plus or minus half a foot. Okay, minus half a foot, you're into this range, right? I think this one is about 22 inches or so, somewhere in there. 20, 22, I forget exactly. I should have measured it before I started talking, but anyway, right? If this was wider, if this had been a wide enough branch to make a big knob on the end, it could be in the smallest end of the hunting boomerang. And some hunting boomerangs do go all the way up to 30 inches. Right? So, you never really are going to see a long-range hunting boomerang over 30 inches. Once you get over 30 inches, over 1 meter long, you're talking the two-handed club, bat-style melee weapons, right? You're not talking about a long-range throwing stick. So, 24 to 28 inches is a very good range to start with. That is dead center, like the middle of the anthropological record. I don't care whether you're looking at sticks from, the Hopi region of the American Southwest, or sticks from Australia, or sticks from King Tut's too. That, 2/3 of a meter-ish is the middle of the range. Okay? So shoot for that length. That'll give you enough mass to carry through. Now, this one is a very good example. It's hard to see grain on video footage, right? It's hard to see those details. But on this one, we have a color change. We have some reddish wood that formed along the one edge of this. Okay, it's just this little band of it. But this does follow the grain, and you can see that the grain follows the curvature of the stick. Okay? That is absolutely crucially important. You cannot take a flat board. You can't just go buy a 1x6. Okay? You can't go... Can you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy a 1x6 white oak board and make a boomerang out of it? Yes. Will it last more than a couple throws? No. Right? You can't have cross grain. Think about the energy that you're exerting when this impacts something and it's flying 60 miles an hour. Okay? Right? If there's cross grain here, it's going to snap. Right? It will not be durable. So you have to find a crooked stick to make this out of. Okay? The classic full tradition way to do it is to find a blank that looks something like this. Okay? This is hop hornbeam, which is a middle tier wood. It has a specific gravity of 0.97, 0.8. Okay, so that's in the right in the middle of the middle tier. So it's a very good choice for this. And this was a root. Okay, so this piece came from my sheep pasture. It was a section I was clearing, and sheep were going to be in it, and they like to girdle this particular species, so I knew it wasn't going to make it anyway. So this was an opportune piece. This where my left hand is here was growing straight up, and it was on a hill, so that was tracing the top of the hill slope. Okay, and that's a very nice blank, because when I cut this, and when I do this, I will do this with a rip saw and rip it right down the middle, and I'll get 2 blanks, and the grain will follow that curvature because it's a natural crook. Okay. So that is a wonderful, wonderful, marvelous way to get a boomerang blank. Second one I'll show you, same species. This was out of a branch. And if you're in North America, the hornbeams, or Europe for that matter, the hornbeams are a good species to look at. Is this in view here, hon? This one is absolutely dead green, so it weighs 1.5 tons. But this will make a nice number 7 boomerang. Okay, and this is, right about, this is pretty close to how it was growing in the tree. Hornbeam is one of those species, and there's others that do this too, but hornbeam is one of those species that really aggressively is going to weave its way through and find the best path to the light as it's growing. So it is not uncommon to find hornbeam sticks that have goofy shapes to them. Okay? If it's growing in dense, similar sized trees right after a disturbance, yes, it'll grow straight up like that first one was growing straight up. If it's out in the open. But when it's under the there's an overstory around it, it's going to weave and find its way into the light, and that gives you a lot of nice boomerang sticks. This one was pruned that had to be pruned because it was directly overhanging some of my critical infrastructure. So this was a necessary property maintenance prune job. And this is how I go about these. Those ash boomerangs I was showing earlier, those were trees that were killed by the emerald ash borer. I have some black locust here that was pulled out of a firewood pile. And instead of cutting it up for firewood, I had it sawn into blanks. So all of this is opportunistic. I've never gone into the forest and cut a tree that had, it harassed a tree that had a long life as a tree, and there was no reason to be harassing it, right? I would not have cut this if it was not overhanging critical infrastructure. But since I needed to cut it anyway, I'll make something out of it, And if you're just, going about your life and keeping your eyes open, you'll find stuff. Now, this one, this little variation, we talked about that and actually threw this in that first video, is out of this same log that this slab is. And it sat right there. Okay. So what I did here was this was in a pile of logs to be cut up for firewood. And since there was this nice big piece and it had all of these nice bends in it, I took it to a neighbor with a bandsaw mill and he helped me cut it into 3/4 inch and 1 inch slabs. So now I can get multiple blanks out of the same tree instead of just hacking away and getting one or two. I didn't get as much as I wanted because you can really see it on this face. There was a lot of damage and grub damage and borers in this. So a lot of otherwise good blanks aren't going to be useful. But I will get a bunch of projects out of this, and even some of these that don't have as nice of a boomerang section in them, I will be able to get some other crafting bits out of. So that's a nice way to reduce a large log. If you find something that's wonderful, don't just hack it apart for one blank. Get a good rip saw and rip it like I'm going to do in those two natural crooks. Or take it, if it's big enough, take it to a bandsaw mill and get some help to slab it out this way. Now, when you're harvesting these, you'll notice it's painted with some pruning goop. Okay? Always dry them with the bark on. Let me rephrase it. If you're not going to use them immediately, dry them with the bark on and always paint the ends with something. The and something can be anything that will slow down water moving out of the wood because you want them to dry slowly over a 2 to 3 year period. That one that's dead green, hopefully I'll be able to get something, do something with that here on the channel because that would be a nice fun project making a number 7 boomerang. But that's not going to happen for 2 or 3 years, right? I just cut that a couple weeks ago. This one, the first one I showed, this is 2.5 years old already, and I can feel from the weight of it, it's pretty darn dry. So this is ready to go. We'll do something with that one fairly soon. Don't try to split those unless you know for sure it's really straight wood. You can see here in the root, right, there's all of these knobby knots coming off of it. This will not split. Okay? Your two options, and I think I can get away with it on this one. I'll have to evaluate it more closely though. You can get a handsaw and you can rip it very carefully down the middle. Or if you don't have enough width, you can just shave both sides down to the middle. Okay? And if it's dead dry, it's not going to split too bad in the middle. You cannot do that with a wet stick Reaching over to grab another piece. Just brought this over to show. This was just a green maple stick that I've been breaking hides on. If you've watched any of the hide tanning videos here on the channel, you see it split right down the pith there in the middle of the wood. And pith does not mean rotten. Pith is just the middle of the twig that grew first when the twig was a green supple growing twig. Okay, that's the pith. It's a little cylinder of parenchyma tissue that all twigs have. And it will always split away from that on a thin edge like that. And if you get an edge that looks like this on a boomerang, eventually it will catch something and it'll split right down the middle. I've had it happen. Okay. And then you'll say, gosh golly gee whizzikers, I wish my boomerang didn't break into two. That's exactly what you're going to say. Right? That's how you do it like that. So you want to make sure if you're pressing it to the middle that it's absolutely dead dry. If you're going to rip it and carve your two boomerangs immediately, you can do it in green wood. Because if you get the pith out, right, so you're making two on two sides of that central pith, okay, and B, you get it very, very thin and very, very flat immediately, it's not going to check too bad. Okay, it probably won't check at all, and if it does, it'll be minor surface checks that you can sand out later in the final processing. You can also steam it or boil it immediately. And if you do that, it will drive off most of the free water, but it will do it while the wood is hot so that it's flexible, like how you would steam bend wood, it's flexible, so it won't crack and explode as it dries down. And then when it does dry, it'll set the lignin and will resist warping and cracking from that point. So if you have a wood that just does not dry for beans, and again, this comes down to knowing your local flora, right? Most of our woods here are pretty well behaved and follow normal expected patterns when drying. Right? Osage and locust can be a little tricky, but other than those, pretty much most of them behave and follow normal expected patterns. But if you have, like real squirrely wood from some other region of the world that's just a nightmare to dry, try that boiling it trick, right? Boil it hot for a couple hours or steam it very, very hot at over 100% humidity so steam is condensing on the wood. And do that for a couple hours and then dry. It will increase your chances of success drying difficult wood. So those are ways you can deal with that. So there's your basic description of woods, wood choices, a little bit on design ideas, and we're going to do more about design and layout in the next video, where we actually will make several blanks, both from boards and from natural crooks, that can turn into these aerodynamic hunting sticks, non-returning boomerangs, whatever you want to call them. Okay, so I'd like to remind you going into that video, if you want to think about design in the meantime and just the whole arc of hunting sticks and what they have been around the world. We have the scrapbook of historic texts on that subject, also combined with a whole lot of information on atlatls. They're in the same volume. And that compilation is available totally free to all patrons. So I'd love to see you there. Hope these materials can be of use to you. And I also hope to see you in the next video where we make some blanks for non-returning boomerangs here at Old Ways Rising Farm. See you there.